Hey guys, Woods Farm here, just back out in the shop working on Project 222. This week we're going to be working on the alternator bracket finally and trying to get that alternator into a better position. We also got some small little projects to do. Working on the engine support on the rear. There's a crack and we have to add some brackets there. And we're going to be working a little bit on the exhaust. I finally got the parts I need to work on the downpipes for the exhaust, and I think we'll finish up with a little bit of electrical work. Okay, this has been on the to-do list for a while. The alternator needs to get moved, so we have to fabricate a different bracket, and hopefully we'll be able to move it down somewhere in this area down here, because the problem I discussed in other videos is right now the way it is, it's actually sticking out too far. You can see the line there. Yeah, it won't actually fit, so we need to move it down. So we've got a few ideas of how to do this, and we're going to start working on that today. Okay, here's the bracket. My son John built this, and this should get the alternator into a slightly better location. We did make the bracket a little bit wider so we can shim it, and that's going to give us the ability to adjust the pulley in or out a little bit so we can get it aligned a little bit better. So there's the bracket, and the alternator is moved down. We had to get a different belt. This is a 48-inch belt. The other belt was a 3/8. This one's 1/2 inch. It's all we could get locally. We think it's going to work, but worst case we can order something online that fits a bit better. So there's an arm that reaches out and attaches to the alternator and works as a tensioning device. So we just got to fabricate a new mount for that and maybe shorten it a bit. There's the new alternator arrangement with the tensioner in place. We've got plenty of clearance now for the body. Here's another little project we've worked on. These are the downpipes that go off the exhaust headers. Had to search around for flanges that would work, that had the right hole pattern and the right diameter hole. And then we had to actually modify these, had to heat them up and bend them. But it should work. I've got some gaskets to go in between, and now we've got some pipe that extends down. We were getting kind of a lot of flames coming out of the exhaust headers, which were very close to the ignition wires and other stuff. So for the time being, this is going to be a little safer, and it's also going to be the start of our exhaust system. I don't know if I'm going to do a dual muffler to start, or I'm just going to scavenge up a single muffler. The original had 2 mufflers, one on each side. So I think we'll eventually do that, but for now we just need to get something on there. Okay, there's the downpipes bolted onto the exhaust manifold, and eventually our exhaust system will clamp onto the bottom of that pipe. A little tricky to get this bolted together. The back stud, the manifold itself was like heavily damaged, but we managed to get a little bolt in there to hold it in place. It was a little easier on the other side. And here's the other side. It was a little easier. There were no actual studs, so we put in some stainless steel bolts, and it clamped down pretty good on that gasket. Okay, so one of the problems we noticed is that there is a crack in the rear engine crossmember, right there, and this actually happened when we transported it back home from Maryland. I think it was bouncing around on the trailer, and that's when that crack developed. And since having the engine running and driving it around, it actually started to get a little bit worse. So you've got the engine support jacked up and moved into position where it needs to be. We're going to re-weld this, but it's really kind of tight in there, and we're actually going to add some reinforcement to the cross member to try to keep this from happening again. This cross piece is part of the frame, and we're going to add this piece of plate steel in there and some triangular braces to kind of brace the center of the engine mount. Okay, here's the bracket. I'm just going to weld it up on the bench and then I'll install it. It's got these triangular braces to give it some extra support, and this will actually weld onto that bar as well. Okay, so I've talked about it before, but we're starting to work a little bit on the wiring, and before things get really out of control, I have to start thinking about a fuse box, a place to put the fuses, the relays, the power distribution block. All that stuff needs a home, and I've been looking for probably a month for something, and I had a couple of ideas. I didn't want to have to build a box from scratch. It just would have been too long and too tedious. So I've been trying to scavenge something up, and finally I came across this at the local restore. $19. Dimensionally it's not perfect. It's a little deeper than I would like. I would have preferred something maybe like an inch shallower and maybe an inch wider, but ultimately I prefer to have more room than not enough. I ran into issues with the Kuba wagon build, and all of my relays and about half of the fuses are tucked up under the dash, and now that the car is completely finished, that wiring is almost impossible to get to. It's very difficult to get in there and troubleshoot if there's any problems. So really I'm learning from that experience, and I want something that's extremely easy access and is very large in terms of having enough room to have everything kind of neat and tidy inside. So I think this is going to serve our purposes, and I just went out and looked at it in relation to the places that I'm thinking about putting it in the actual vehicle, specifically kind of the back driver's side near the battery. I think it'll be out of the way, but it'll still be accessible, and I like the idea that it's going to be close to the battery, so if there's any heavy gauge cable, I don't have to run as much of it, and that saves money. This switch here is not ideal. It would have been better if it was just a box, but I am starting to think that maybe I can remove this and I can actually install a master battery cutoff. I've got one of those in the Kuba wagon, and it comes in handy when you want to store the vehicle like over the winter. You can hit that switch and you can kill the battery, and if you have any sort of wiring issues or shorts, you're not going to drain the battery down while it's in storage. So I may have a switch here. If I don't, what I'm going to do is I'll just take a piece of sheet metal and I'll fabricate a piece that covers this hole, and it'll just be a clean box. And I like this. It's already got a latch. It's got some knockouts already in the bottom, so we can have a place for our wiring to go in, and we'll be able to bolt it right to the side of the vehicle on the inside, and we'll have a good place to put all of our electrical stuff. Okay, here's the box all emptied out. It was really easy to take the guts out, just some screws, and we're left with a nice big open space. So now I'm going to start working on a panel that will secure all of the stuff, the fuse blocks, the relays, and everything else we need to make it work. Okay, here's the finished panel. I still need to order a few parts. I only had 2 relay connectors, so I'm going to have to get another one. So there'll be a 3rd relay, and there's obviously space. I can add more relays after the fact. And I've got 2 fuse blocks. Each of them have 4 circuits. And then down at the bottom, I've got 2 terminals for a positive and negative. All the wiring is on the back, so it makes everything look nice and clean. On the front end, all you've really got access to is the relays if you have to change them, and fuses. Okay, so here's the wiring so far on the back. I think this positive terminal is actually going to be sufficient, but I might get an actual power distribution block for the ground. And of course, I mentioned I need to get a relay for this space here just to have that. Right now, the only circuits we have are the ignition circuit, the starter motor, and the fan. And the fan is obviously going to be drawing a lot of power, so we've got that on a relay. But there's plenty of room here to add lights and accessories and things like that. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap this video up here. We got a lot of work done this week. I'm really happy to see that alternator get moved down, and I wasn't sure how easy that would be, and I was kind of procrastinating. Another thing, getting that cracked engine support fixed and a new bracket there to give it a little more strength. I'm really happy to see that happen. Also the electrical, I don't like doing electrical, but now that I've got the fuse box started and I've got a good plan worked out, I know where I'm headed. It should be fairly easy and straightforward from here. I think the plan is to do a system where I completely finish the fuse box and then I just continuously wire things into that. I know all the circuits we need, so not too hard to go from here. If you want to see more videos of Project 222, definitely like and subscribe. We're going to try to do weekly videos at least until summer, and then picking up again in the fall. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. As always, thanks for watching.